Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Point Break. I'm Antara, and in today's episode, I want to start by taking you all down the memory lane. This story starts in 2024 when an engineering firm, Arup, lost approximately $25 million after an employee joined a video call populated by deepfake versions of senior executives. Now, the attackers didn't defeat a firewall, they essentially defeated the employee's ability to tell a colleague from a simulation. Now, that is the new attack surface. It's not the perimeter, it's the human, and increasingly the AI system sitting inside these organizations. India, in fact, is accelerating AI adoption across banking, telecommunications, healthcare, power, transport, education, government, and space. You name it, we are there already. At the same time, cyber criminals are also weaponizing the same technology as we speak. AI can automate reconnaissance, generate convincing multilingual phishing campaigns, discover vulnerabilities at scale. They can imitate executives, they can coordinate multi-stage attacks at a speed that was previously requiring teams of skilled hackers. In fact, CERT-In has responded. AI-driven systems for malicious domain detection, expanded vulnerability assessments, automated threat intelligence exchange as well. Now, in June and July 2026 alone, it conducted 10 exercises on AI-driven cyber threats involving 1,470 participants from 345 organizations. But participation in exercises does not prove operational resilience. India, in fact, has millions of enterprises and hospitals and universities, municipalities and MSMEs running systems of vastly different ages and security maturity. And employees are in fact now using AI co-pilots and agents that connect to these emails and documents and databases. Every additional permission essentially expands the potential damage of a compromised system. So the question is not whether Indian enterprises should adopt AI. It is whether they can scale AI while remaining secure, or whether adoption is moving faster than the ability to control the risks. That is essentially the moot point of the conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Antara. This is Point Break. Let's get right into it. Two guests today, two of them who are building India's cyber defenses from very, very different vantage points. Sarthak Dubey is the co-founder and CEO of Mitigata, India's first full-stack cyber resilience platform integrating security, risk, compliance, and cyber insurance. He, in fact, has been on Point Break before, and he is one of the, I would say, sharpest practitioners thinking about what AI-enabled cyber threats would actually look like on the ground. Sarthak, welcome back on Point Break.
Thank you, Antara. Glad to be here.
And my second guest today is Abhishek Tripathi, who is the co-founder and chief of innovation at Deep Algorithm Solutions, which is a Hyderabad-based cybersecurity and AI startup building what it calls continuous identity risk management. Now, their products, Adapt IDI and Bot Shield, use behavioral biometrics and AI to essentially detect these identity fraud and stop application layer attacks in real time. Already deployed in a leading private bank and a central government institution backed by Unicorn India Ventures. Abhishek, welcome to Point Break.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Antara.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you both here on Point Break, gentlemen. Let me start by setting the table really here. CERT-In ran 10 AI cyber attack exercises in 2 months involving, I believe, 345 organizations. Is that India getting serious about AI cyber threats, or is it 345 organizations out of millions feeling better about a problem that they haven't actually solved? Abhishek, if you want to go first.
Right. So if you see about the exercises, which are being conducted globally, certain coming forward and conducting first in India.
Yes.
When these exercises are really important in terms of getting ahead, or maybe getting par with the current AI landscape, because at least we know that where we are, how our systems are built, and how we are progressing towards the AI attainment, right? That means we're building an ecosystem where AI can sustain, AI can scale, AI can be utilized as a powerful tool. That was really important, but there still are many challenges, such as only 347 or 345 organizations getting
The
participated.
sample
I
size by
believe
itself is very small, I
exactly,
believe.
yes, exactly, that is very small.
Hmm.
And why I'm saying that is because uh, if you see in an Indian digital ecosystem, we are all interconnected, right? These 345 organizations, they are interconnected by identities. They have multiple supply chain providers, multiple vendors, right? All of whom we are, I mean, they are connected to their internal systems in one way or another, right? So if we want to conduct an exercise, it should be a realistic bunch of sample, as you mentioned, right? A smaller chunk was taken, and it should cover. It should start from cover. It should start its coverage from the supply chain management. How AI can affect the supply chain management, right? What different attacks or threats could be posed in, and then move laterally into it. I believe, yeah. I mean, the sample size could be a larger, and but it is a very good starting point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarthak, your perspective?
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate the way how certain, probably initiated the dialogue in terms of spreading awareness at the same time having real-time tabletop exercises with these organizations. But as Abhishek said, the 345 is, a rounding error in the millions of organizations that we have. So it's an extremely small sample size. Also, so when you can't really decide 360, 345 or 500 or 600 to be, some sort of the leaders in those particular domains or those particular industries, because an attack on a manufacturing industry is completely different than an attack on, probably a healthcare company.
Yes.
Also, when you take an example of large organizations as your sample size, you completely ignore the fact that majority, or that is probably more than 90% of the organizations in India have zero cybersecurity measures in place with them. And probably most of these 345 companies that certain picked already had some bit of cybersecurity measures in place. So now the attack surface for them, for smaller organizations, is significantly larger as compared to the larger firms where cybersecurity is already in place.
Absolutely.
So, talking about in general the way how it would be ideally conducted later on as well would be implementing similar kind of measures and implementing specific kind of attacks and tabletop exercises for specific kind of industries. But I think so. Yeah, absolutely amazing step. First step to start with. But I think so. We have a long way to go here.
Certainly. Thank you for that, Abhishek and Sarthak. AI lowers the cost of every stage of an attack. What took weeks can now happen in hours. Phishing that required, a skilled human writer can now generate thousands of personalized and multilingual messages. Vulnerability discovery that required expert hackers can now be partially automated. So the threat is no longer primarily, poorly written emails or isolated malware for that matter. It is, I would say, coordinated, it is adaptive, it is fast. Sarthak, what can an AI-enabled attacker actually do today that a conventional cybercriminal couldn't do at the comparable speed or scale?
Yeah. So quite similar to one of the pointers I made in the previous discussions that I had on this panel. An AI attacker or AI in general, not an attacker, but an agent who is running any kind of offensive exercise, is essentially an employee or a hacker who doesn't get tired. So more than the fact that there is the number of iterations that are automatically possible for an agent to perform in terms of whether it is phishing, whether it is something else, whether it is identifying vulnerabilities, whether it is reporting vulnerabilities. It is an extremely high number as compared to what a human would have
Exactly.
done. So
Yeah.
that has changed the equation altogether as well. And in a similar case where very recently I read that an attacker eventually got access to the gym's membership or the gym's admin portal and took someone out of the
Yes,
list
this happened in
for the
Australia.
person to get in. Yeah, this
Yeah.
happened in Australia. So there are similar kind of use cases which will come up very quickly, and these are similar kind of use cases which will keep on adding up, where the attacker would be again, like, not necessarily with a bad intent, but would be making some sort of damages. So
Absolutely.
protocols, again, guardrails would be eventually be able to help them, help companies prevent that.
Absolutely, Sarthak. I completely agree with that point of yours because right now what we are seeing is in terms of these attacks, like you mentioned, the AI agent did not really start with a malicious intent. It was simply doing the job it was asked to do, come what may. That's
Yep.
essentially how these AI agents are working, right? They completely, the ethics of it completely take a back seat. The
Yep.
objectiveness of it completely takes a back seat, and they just go on to finish the task, no matter what is at stake, no matter at what cost. So I believe that essentially is a very, very big red flag for that matter. Absolutely, Sarthak. Abhishek, is the primary risk greater intelligence, relentless experimentation, or is it the ability to coordinate several stages of an attack simultaneously? Because those are different threats requiring different defenses, right? And most Indian enterprises are still defending against a last decade's version of this.
Absolutely. So, if you see, knowledge is basically a very important part. I mean, it plays because when we talk about a frontier LLM, it is basically trained with numerous amount of data that our forefathers actually worked with. Right? It has all the books. It has everything which a analyst should read.
Yeah.
Right? It has gained, you can say, PhD in it. Right? That is there, but the level of coordination which an AI can bring into the picture is like unassumable, right? And if humans are working in that way, they cannot coordinate in that way, right? So
Absolutely.
that I feel is really important, and that I feel is the real driver of the agent-based attacks.
Absolutely.
If you see the OpenAI case which happened with the Hugging Face, there were two
Yeah.
models, right? And then they basically discovered the third party application, and again they tried to
Yes.
modify that particular agent into laterally moving into the Hugging Face environment, right? By converting their Kubernetes passwords and everything. So I feel coordination and what was it, the delegation, right? Who should take care of what part, right? If suppose in a workflow you have multiple agents, delegation or coordination is, I feel, it's something is sort of a driver of this autonomy or autonomous world in which we are moving into.
Absolutely,
So I
Abhishek.
think
In fact, yes, Sarthak, you wanted to add something?
Essentially, I mean, for that, I think so. Relentless experimentation by a distance is a, major problem or major thing that the AI is able to do, because AI isn't essentially smarter than your best red teamer, but it runs tens of thousands of variations without getting tired, without getting fatigued,
Yeah.
and keeps the one that works. So you can defend against intelligence. You can defend against intelligence and what are the new things that the AI is doing, but you can't outrun tirelessness, right? That
Absolutely.
the AI will bring in. So that's
Absolutely. With
yeah.
with AI in picture, the playing field for the risk is higher than ever before, and I think that needs to be flagged, and it needs to be keep getting flagged over and over again, because this is a very, very real risk and a very real concern in a lot of organizations. Uh,
Yep.
Sarthak, which Indian sectors, from your vantage points, which Indian sectors are most, exposed to these machine speed attacks? Is it BFSI? Is it healthcare? Is it government? Is it critical infrastructure? If you could, rank them.
So I think so. There are two ways to rank this. These, while the most obvious answers would be the critical infrastructure, the payment infrastructures, BFSI, etc. But what we have been seeing around, the major attacks on the automated attacks and the agent-led attacks have been happening on small retailers. Just an example, we have been working with a company, and that company just does manufacturing for, or not even manufacturing, they are the design, like they sew the design on Zara t-shirts, etc. And it's
Yeah.
a small company based out of Tamil Nadu. The only means of any kind of IT connected in that organization is one laptop, and because of one particular phishing email, that laptop, they were not able to access that email. That company could not get designs for the next 2 weeks, and they couldn't give the designs back to Zara, and that led to a business interruption for that company. So now the attacks, when of course, the obvious answers would be the critical infrastructure, BFSI, and healthcare. But the smaller industries, the hardware stores of the world, the manufacturers, the retail chains are also facing a significantly higher amount of attack because, like I had mentioned before, they don't have any kind of cybersecurity measures in
Right.
place.
Right.
So it's easier to they are easy target to target basically.
Makes sense. Makes sense, Sarthak. I have another question, and this is for the both of you. Are existing security teams really capable of responding at the speed, AI agents can attack, or do you think we are already fighting a war with the wrong weapons? This is a question for the both of you. So, Abhishek, if you want to take it first.
Right. So when we talk about autonomous, I feel we are entering into an era which would be AI versus AI. Right. There would be AIs attacking, and there would be AIs which would be utilized or which should be utilized for the defense purposes. Because the mean time to detect and mean time to respond for a human, it is very I mean, it takes so much time to respond to a particular alert, right? If you see an associate analyst, it takes almost 5 minutes to 10 minutes to attend to an alert and to start investigation. But by that time, the infrastructure would have been breached, right? So
Absolutely.
we need a defense which can actually reduce this MTD and MTR to at least, I mean, 2 seconds basically, right? So there should be AI to correlate these alerts and automate your investigations such that any alerts which is getting into the system should be processed in seconds, right? Should be handled in an automated fashion, and only bring in the human when a critical decision or maybe a decision which actually gives access or maybe critical access to this AI should be should be governed by a human in the loop.
Okay. Sarthak, your perspective?
Can existing teams respond to AI attacks manually? No. There is no way how existing teams can respond to them. But like Abhishek mentioned, bringing in automated threat detection, automated threat containment, whether it is using AI SOC, whether it is using any kind of AI MDR, which sort of a human would detect, and it would take a significant amount of time for a human to detect. Remove a number of false positives, triage, and bring an inference within few seconds rather than spending 10-15 minutes on a single alert is something the companies will have to eventually implement, and that is exactly what we have been building and developing for businesses. So I would say that the AI has to come in at any stage of defense, which is a reversible process. Wherever there is an irreversible change, you have to have a human in the loop who basically makes sure that everything is running nicely. And of course, there is no AI versus AI problems that would occur.
Absolutely, makes sense. Let's also talk about whether India's preparedness is real here. Certain exercises and advisories indicate growing institutional awareness, but at the same time, 345 organizations, out of millions, like we were talking about, it is not, I would say, a comprehensive coverage. And participation in an exercise is very, very different from surviving an actual attack. Abhishek, what did certain exercises actually reveal about India's, ability to really withstand these AI-enabled attacks? Are the 345 participating organizations representative of India's real exposure to these cyber attacks?
All right. So for the first question, I believe the exercises were actually carried on multiple malware and ransomware based attacks, right? And they actually they actually provided a better sense that yes, India is actually moving towards a better cyber resilience future. But at the same time, you cannot actually what do I say predict that only these kind of attacks or these kind of malwares or ransomwares could come in the future because of the scaling and because of the automating industry, right? So I feel the subset which they have taken of almost I think they have taken a set of problems which they have distributed, and the results are promising. But I believe the problem sits could be more expanding. I mean, it should actually cover, because why I'm making this point is India is actually a very interconnected digital industry, because you have multi-billion companies, but the vendor or the supply chain which they are taking is a normal, maybe an MSME company, right? So problem statements need to be defined or needs to be fine tuned based on this scenario, right? Apart from building malwares and ransomware, they should be part, but the interconnected ecosystem problem statement based on these should be more analyzed.
All right.
Right. Now into the second question, that the 345 do they represent? Right. I believe this, as Sarthak already mentioned, that this is a great starting point. But sampling only 345 and we are million of people. I mean, that is something which could be which should have been worked out nicely.
Certainly. In fact, Abhishek, this brings me to my next question, and the next question is for you, Sarthak. How should cyber preparedness, be independently measured rather than self-reported? And I'll tell you why I'm saying that, because, right now, most of what we know about these enterprise preparedness comes from the enterprises themselves. So do you think there should be an independent voice in the picture that is measuring the level of preparedness?
A little bit different from what traditional people think, but the cyber insurance model already does this, right?
Okay.
You don't ask clients whether they are secure, you observe controls continuously. I mean, that is what we do essentially, where we observe the controls continuously and price the residual, right? So independent measurements and continuous monitoring, along with adversarial testing, creating the sort of telemetry which is required to understand what exactly the business risk for a business is, in terms of just in order to get a cyber insurance. It's like a health checkup in order to get a cyber a health insurance, right? So cyber insurance model, or every company who is taking cyber insurance in some way or the other, not just filing questionnaires, but also with the continuous telemetry where where Mitigata primarily operates in, get a lot of information about the businesses and what exactly is the risk posture where they are lying at this point of time. For the businesses who don't have cyber insurance, of course, a risk exercise and a risk dialogue where sort of like a regulated VAPT that CERT-In has been anyway been doing, where there is a way how the VAPT is conducted, that VAPT reports is required. So in a lot of scenarios, the self-reporting versus continuous monitoring kind of situation is already being happening. For example, a B2B contract, in order for a company to get a B2B contract, they have to have certain controls in place. They have to have certain VAPTs exercises, the red teaming exercises, at the same time cyber insurance in place. So I would say that cyber insurance is a very good model, and more the companies implement cyber insurance with themselves, there will be a better information that CERT-In will also be having, because you can't really lie to a cyber to an insurance company. So even if you're self-reporting, it has to be accurate. So that will give a very clearer picture to CERT-In as well, as compared to just letting people self-report.
So are you saying, Sarthak, that most of these enterprises already have this independent verification in place? Do they already have these independent verification on board?
Absolutely. So in order to get a cyber insurance, you have to basically give the details of your entire risk posture with in your organization, whether it is your endpoint risk, whether it is employee risk, etc. So they've already done that to the insurance companies, via people like us.
All right. Thank you for that clarity, Sarthak. I also want to talk about the Arup incident, which was, I would say, not a technical failure. I think it was a trust failure. Because deepfakes and voice cloning and personalized social engineerings allow attackers to impersonate executives and vendors and colleagues and public officials, for that matter. Now, traditional awareness training may be, I would say, inadequate when the fraudulent communication looks and sounds completely authentic. Sarthak, how should employees really verify consequential instructions when voices and faces and messages can all be fabricated?
I mean, that is what we call when we, implement a zero trust framework in the organization, where, the protocols has to be defined, the consequential instructions has to be given in a way where, your the risk reduces, where you are not inherently trusting whatever you are seeing at that point of time. And while of course having some controls in place, for example, this particular incident would have been avoided in case they had the right set of cybersecurity controls in the organization. Having those controls, of course, saves that. At the same time, having some sort of zero trust architecture and zero trust framework amongst the employees as well, that sort of is the only way how you can solve it, because this is a human psychology problem. Like you rightly mentioned, this is not a cyber security related problem. It's more of a human psychology problem where you are able to understand. So again, awareness, having the right protocols, at the same time having a zero trust framework would be would have solved this or would have avoided this problem.
And another question, Sarthak, should large financial transfers and sensitive actions require, out of band or cryptographically verified approval?
100%, absolutely. There has to be any kind of critical and like I said, any kind of financial transactions, any kind of critical decision which could be again financially loss making or which includes a financial transaction or which is an irreversible thing, has to have multiple humans in the loops, specifically in terms of financial transaction. There should be multiple approvals. That's why we have MFAs in place for that.
Right. And Abhishek, deep algorithms builds behavioral biometrics, right? Now, continuous monitoring of, how people interact with systems, essentially. Does behavioral identity become more valuable when, visual and audio identity could be faked and could be faked that easily?
Right. So, I just like to add few points to the earlier question with Sarthak.
Yes, please.
About the Arup incident, right? So, what I believe is, I agree with the zero trust methodology should be implemented and should be actually taught to all the employees and resources in the organization. But I think there should be a framework of context and intent, right, for each transaction which is happening. It could be, a transaction could be sharing of sensitive information, or maybe a financial transaction, anything. So, an employee or a resource should be able to identify, depending on the context and intent of each transaction, right? And each of the identities which are lying in your infrastructure should actually carry your intent, context, and the behavioral authentication, or the behavior which they are interacting with the other identity or with the other device, right? That should be continuously monitored, and that will actually give us, or that will actually prevent these kind of attacks from happening. Right? You cannot directly stop deepfakes from happening. You cannot integrate deepfake detection in all your tools, but you can bring a framework change which would help you in identifying these kinds of attacks. Similar thing we are doing with the agents. We are actually developing a governance language model. We are going to launch it very soon. What we do in that, we actually find out whether the intent and the context this model is working in, whether it is right, or whether it should work in this or not, right? But does the CEO of the company continuously has a meeting with the employees? Does he receive continuous instructions from the employee, from the CEO? Right. This is the intent, and this is the context. I believe this would be the path the industry should take if they want to prevent from these kind of attacks.
Okay. Abhishek and Sarthak, can organizations, continue relying on human judgment as the last line of defense against these deepfakes, or would you say that line has already been crossed?
Right. So, by this Arup incident only, we can take this as a base, right? It was an employee judgment which actually failed, right? He was unable to find out
exactly where the question.
He was interacting with the right persons or not, right? So I believe that should not be mandatory, or it should not be the end of the line. What we should have is an hybrid model, where for most of the time we should actually we can actually divide the multiple types of actions into two categories, right? Categories. In first category, you can have actions which are reversible, or which do not make a huge impact, right, and which your organization can bear. These kind of interactions and these kind of tasks should be allotted or should be assigned to the LLMs or the automated agents. And the tasks which are actually kind of a huge impact for you and could actually create a significant impact, those should be handled by the human, right? So this kind of tiering is really important in order to identify or basically to identify this.
All right. Thank you for that, Abhishek. Thank you for that answer. I would request you to, if you could just check your internet connection once, because I'm losing you in between here and there. And while you do that, Sarthak, what is your perspective on this?
No, absolutely. I agreed with Abhishek. Humans, in terms of the, again, actions, whether they are irreversible, or whether they are reversible, whether it is a, high value outbound money movement, whether it is a production data deletion, whether it is the identity or access changes, whether it is credentials handling, agent will prepare, humans will confirm, depending on, of course, the behavioral understanding of that particular circumstance as well. Like Abhishek mentioned, a CFO would not randomly come and say that you need to make a very large scale transaction. So having those behavioral understanding, at the same time having a human in the loop, would sort of keep these things away from happening.
But having only a human in the loop, like Abhishek was also pointing out, I think that also would become risky. I do agree with Abhishek's point, how we need a sort of a, what was the term that you used there, Abhishek? That we need to have some sort of a hybrid model. Yes, we need to have some sort of a hybrid model in place, because I think when you put a human in the last line of the decision making, A, there's a lot of pressure, of course, and B, the stakes are way too high, especially with the kind of attacks, with the kind of incidents that are happening back to back for that matter. Just having a human in the loop, for that human to make the end decision, I think that by itself is risky. So yes, I do believe there needs to be some sort of hybrid model in place. Thank you for that, Abhishek and Sarthak. Let's also talk about AI agents inside the enterprise, because I think this is where the risk is most, I would say, underestimated. AI agents increasingly connect to email, databases, cloud systems, business applications. Now, a compromised agent, with broad permissions could cause, considerably more damage than a compromised chatbot. And the UK ISI evaluation showed frontier agents taking, unsanctioned actions on the live internet, including attempting to insert malicious code into an open source project and creating false identities to influence a maintainer. Now, these agents had deliberately been given internet access for evaluation purpose, but the behavior itself was downright disturbing. Abhishek, what permissions should enterprises never fully delegate to an AI agent? And also, is there a meaningful line between a useful agent and a dangerous one at that?
Right. So this is something which we are actually actively working on. Right. So we are actually creating. So okay. Just so we understand how the traditional system works. Currently, there is a system called as just-in-time access. Right. PAM, privileged access management systems, use that. So in that, what happens? You, an employee or a resource, gains access to a particular system for some time, right, or for one particular application.
Yes.
Similar concept we are bringing into the agentic AI workflows, and that we are calling it as just one task access, right? So whenever an agent interacts with your infrastructure or maybe internet, right, it actually does a list of tasks. Now, if you give him a broader permission, a broader level of permissions, the agent can do anything. Right? It can go on and delete your databases. It can access any sort of applications in the internet.
Yeah.
I believe that is creating a lot more a riskier environment for all the companies.
Certainly. Yeah.
And now we should move towards the just one task types framework. So what this just one task framework will do is, it would analyze, it would bind your agent to a single identity which is generated for every interaction, for each task, right? Until unless the intent and context of that task matches, it would not be assigned that particular identity and it would not be able to, do that particular task, right? So you are basically binding your agent, or you're governing your agent for one task, right? For each of the tasks, and that would significantly bring the risk down. So I believe, yeah, instead of giving any permission, you analyze what it is trying to do, what it is trying to interact, right? Is the intent of the agent right, and does it fit into the context? If yes, you assign the identity, it would go and do the task, and again that particular identity cannot be reused again, right? So your problem is solved.
Right.
So just one task is the framework to go forward.
Okay. And Sarthak, from a resilience platform standpoint, how can organizations really prevent prompt injection and from becoming a root into these internal systems?
Yeah, like Abhishek mentioned, use case driven access management for AI agents is the way to go in that particular scenario. And of course, there are a lot of tools which are also, preventing those particular kind of use cases. So that's the only way to go forward around how exactly you can prevent the AI agents. It is very similar to what exactly is the access and what exactly is the task and use case that you have given to an employee, right? If your agent is supposed to do a particular thing, you will always have, until unless you have a use case defined for that particular agent. If you are giving the agent a free flow into your systems end to end, that sort of creates a risk automatically. So as and when you have defined the use cases, as and when you understand what exactly is the reason why you're using the agent for, you can define the access and you can manage the access and what exactly can be done. That's probably the way how you can prevent.
Absolutely, Sarthak. In fact, I want to build up on that answer of yours. Should AI agents receive temporary task-specific credentials instead of persistent access? And if yes, then why isn't that already a standard practice?
I mean, the thing is, well, of course, to answer your question, yes, of course, that should be the case. Secondly, why this is not a standard practice is because things have been moving extremely fast over the last 1 year for people to create those policies, those fraud protocols, and create those guardrails. Now, the companies, the security companies, the security teams are adding up and creating those policies. But I think Abhishek wanted to add something on this as well.
Yes, please,
Right.
Abhishek.
So what I wanted to add here is that so when we talk about access management, right, the traditional access managements, they were actually not built for this kind of speed, right, for this kind of autonomous era. So what we need is we need dynamic policy engine, which actually creates an identity in runtime. It assigns accesses in runtime, right? So we need that kind of access management.
Abhishek, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I'm losing you there.
Built for AI. We're building an AI.
Abhishek, am I audible? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Abhishek. I think I'm losing you a little in between. There seems to be some sort of internet issue on your end. Yes, now I can. Yeah.
Right. So what I was saying is that we need a dynamic access management system, which is actually built for AI, right? And that is what we are doing. We are building an ecosystem where agents are governed for their throughout the life cycle, from provision to the maintenance and to the remover or what you want to say. So throughout the life cycle, their access management should be dynamic. It should not be like that once you have given access, you forget it. It should not be like that. Once, if an agent is requesting something, you should analyze what it is requesting, why it is requesting, and should it request that. These questions should be answered before giving access to any resources in your organization or the internet, to say. Right. So dynamic policy engine is the way forward.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that, Abhishek. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Did I cut you off?
No.
All right. Perfect. I also want to talk about the defense side of this story. manual security operations cannot really probe and investigate every alert or respond to automated attacks at machine speed, like you rightly pointed out. Now, defense AI could detect, it could investigate and contain these threats faster, but at the same time, autonomous remediation can also sort of, I would say, interrupt essential systems or even amplify an initial mistake. And there, of course, is a deeper problem here. What happens when an offensive agent, deliberately manipulates a defensive agent's reasoning? Sarthak, would you say that we are entering an agent versus agent cybersecurity environment? And also, what happens when the offensive agent specifically designed to manipulate the defensive one? What happens then?
I mean, in terms of, again, agent versus agent environment, we are already there at the edges. Of course, there have been, AI defenses who have been responding to the AI attacks. The realistic term in the near time is not autonomous versus autonomous. It is AI augmented humans on both sides. Because if it is of course, an AI versus AI on both sides, it is always going to be like, there's a possibility of hallucinations anyway. The side that automates the boring 90-95% of the tasks, which are the repetitive tasks and which does not exactly require a human decision making, is going to be, of course, the game changer, and is going to basically win the task. So I'm not saying that the entire workflow for your security operation needs to be automated, but the 90% boring tasks, which included, looking at a particular alert, triaging that particular alert, and then creating a report for it, sending it to an L2 engineer, sending it to an L3 engineer, etc. All of those processes, which would have taken probably 80-85% of the time for a security engineer, has to be automated from a defense perspective.
Okay.
Similarly, and the decision making for that will, of course, require a human in the loop wherever the decision is not reversible.
All right. And Sarthak, which defensive actions can be safely automated and which must remain under human control as per your vantage point?
So, detection, triage, your enrichment, any kind of reversible containment which is required, which does not, of course, involve deploying a malware to the offensive side of things, but essentially isolation of the host to basically kill a particular token who has probably tried to infiltrate. Is basically something that the agents can do, and the automation can be done.
Yeah.
But on top of that, humans would be essentially taking any kind of critical decision making in this particular scenario, and solving for the problems which are hard to reverse.
Understood. And Abhishek, I believe both Shield and Adapt IDAI are AI native defenses, right? How do you build a defensive AI system that an attacker cannot, reverse engineer or manipulate, for that matter?
So instead of building an LLM to solve the same problem, which are created by LLM, we are focusing on building native models, right? These native models are built from scratch, and these are built only for a specific purpose, that is protection. And in protection also, if there is a certain use case in production, then we build model for that particular use case. For example, we are building an SLM or a small language model for agentic AI governance only. That model would be responsible to identifying whether a step or a stage taken by the agent is valid or not, right? Is it governed? Does it comes under the scope of the agent or the user triggering it or not? So what we are doing is we are not again taking or inferencing some other LLM to further cause. We are building our own agent from the scratch, and we are building for a particular use case, right? So it is focused on a single use case, and it cannot be easily manipulated.
Okay, all right. Thank you for explaining that, Abhishek. I also want to talk about where does the buck really stop? Where does the accountability really lie? Because treating these AI risks solely as an IT problem, it leaves senior leadership sort of unaware of the organization's true exposure. And when something goes wrong, accountability becomes murky. Sarthak, what should boards really demand before approving the deployment of consequential AI agents, and who is really accountable when an AI-enabled breach happens?
We have something called the blast radius assessment. Essentially, what exactly is the worst case scenario in case something goes wrong? In order to sort of any kind of larger board related approvals, whether we have a kill switch for that or not, whether what exactly the policy state, what exactly would be the actual use cases, and the prevention mechanism in case something goes wrong. Taking worst case in the examples would be the bare minimum that of course the board and the decision makers would be looking for in terms of in case something goes wrong, do we have a skill switch to be very simple scenario. So that is basically one of the criterias. Apart from that, again, like I said, what exactly is a reversible change? What exactly is an irreversible change? If it is irreversible, then of course there will be more scrutiny towards how exactly you implement that. If it is irreversible, then of course,
Understood. Understood. Abhishek, and help me understand this. Should executive compensation be linked to measurable cyber resilience outcomes? Because right now the incentive structure doesn't really punish executives for security failures in any meaningful way. So where do you stand on that?
So I feel, it should be linked, but but it should be partial, right? And it should not be linked directly with the amount of incidents which are happening in that particular infrastructure, because incidents normally do happen in any organization, right? And it should not be treated as it should not be linked to the compensation, but it should be linked to the process. That means to the operational efficiency of the particular organization. What is the time taken to detect that particular breach, right? What is the time taken to detect that particular attempt of a breach, right? And how, after detecting, what are the operational efficiencies which the CISO or the CIO has made, right, to respond to that attack or to contain that particular attack, right? In case of agentic identity, did they assess the impact clearly or not, right? And also identifying whether real time or runtime AI kill switch are enabled or not in case of AI, right? And different. So we should actually characterize, or we should actually classify different types of incidents and the time to respond, and those incident response should be linked to the compensation, not the incidents, not the amount of incidents which are happening.
But that needs to be there in the picture to even begin with, for that matter, because I believe right now enterprises are not really, I would say, implementing that to its full scale, right?
Yes.
So absolutely, Abhishek and Sarthak, I also want to talk about the supply chain problem, because I honestly feel nobody talks about it enough. Now, a company may maintain strong internal security and still be compromised through a cloud provider or a software vendor or an open source dependency. Now, AI makes it, I would say, dramatically easier to search an entire supply chain for its weakest point. And the weakest point is usually the smallest vendor. So, Abhishek, can large enterprises remain secure when their smaller suppliers lack basic cyber controls? And also, who should carry the cost of raising standards across the supplier ecosystem?
Right. So, if you see, in the beginning of the call, I mentioned that India's ecosystem is very interconnected. Right. You have a smaller organization serving the larger organizations in one way or another. And for that only, we are building actually the continuous identity risk management system, where we continuously analyze any identity accessing the company's infrastructure. When we talk about any identity, even the vendors or the suppliers' identity come into the picture, right? So, if there is a credential compromise, or if there is an identity compromise at the supplier's end, then this system would help detect and also respond to those attacks and attempts.
Okay.
Right. So we need some sort of arrangement, which not only focuses on the company's internal employees or company's internal infrastructure, but also it should extend those services to suppliers and vendors also. I'm not saying currently the system is not there. We have systems, we have integrity checks, right? We have BAPD certifications and compliances which are being done by the vendors, but this should actually expand or extend to the runtime security as well.
Understood. Understood. Thank you for that, Abhishek. I also want to speak about the testing paradox and whether frontier AI can be tested without really endangering the internet. Now, the UK AISI evaluation demonstrated this directly. Evaluators, must provide realistic environments to understand what advanced agents can do. But at the same time, permissive testing can expose real people and organizations to, unintended activity. Now, across 122 runs, I believe agents took 19 unsanctioned actions on the live internet. Now, in the most serious case, an agent attempted to insert malicious code into an open source project. Sarthak, should frontier cyber evaluations ever have unrestricted access to the public internet, and also who is liable really when a safety test itself causes damage to an unrelated organization?
To answer the second question first, of course, the frontier models and the companies and the research labs are the ones who would be essentially liable, because the way how again the testing has to be done, there is a the point is more around fighting the unknown at this point of time. In case you have quite a large unknown, you could simply be doing an open testing, for everybody. So you need to make sure that there is a staggered process on how exactly you would want to. Building capability is one part, but testing it on a wide scale market, of course, should be having a staggered process from the frontier AI models, and of course they would be liable for any kind of malicious things happening. And like I mentioned last time as well, in terms of liability, that is a tech errors and omissions problem for liability for businesses as well. So I think so the AI labs, frontier AI labs, would be responsible and liable for that.
All right. And Abhishek and Sarthak, I do have one question for the two of you here. Should laboratories be legally required to, publicly disclose every incident involving unauthorized external activity during testing, even if it embarrasses them?
Absolutely. Like I said, that it is very convenient for them to tell that our model is so smart that it has taken certain things. So it should not be a marketing activity only, but it should be more of a a responsibility where they have to mention and they have to report any kind of leakages. While of course there is a a flip point to this where those particular reports or those particular analysis that the companies would come up with saying that this is where the AI has failed or the testing has not worked might also give an edge to the the black hat hacker around there. But that's exactly the way. Again, how exactly are you going to represent what exactly are your findings becomes very critical. But absolutely, they should be they should be putting it out there in the front.
Certainly. Abhishek, your perspective on this?
I actually agree with Sarthak. I mean, if there is an incident, it should be reported. But I believe the time of reporting should be a factor here, because immediately reporting an attack or immediately reporting a model failure would result in multiple incidents, right? Right, like Sarthak mentioned, the offensive guys can actually make use of it and can create a havoc. I believe that is something where the line should be drawn, and the company or the frontier model producer should actually identify type of incidents and the type of information which are to be released before and after the incidents. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you for that, Abhishek and Sarthak. In the interest of time, I'll have to wrap this segment short, but I do have one final question before I let you go. India is moving rapidly to adopt AI across businesses, government, and critical infrastructure. But if attackers can automate and impersonate trusted people and really exploit vulnerabilities faster than the organizations can detect them, should India prioritize deploying AI as quickly as possible, or does the country first need to ensure that every powerful system can be contained and can be monitored and recovered when something actually goes wrong?
I think so. You can't be running when there is someone else who is, having a jetpack on the back, right? So you have to, of course, work on implementing and making sure that you are fast enough and you are doing everything, while at the same time building the guardrails and building the procedures, policies around AI in your organization as well.
But
So I
what
think
would
so.
you
Both have to go.
prioritize, Sarthak? What would you
It has to
prioritize?
be it has to be making sure that your AI defenses are fast enough, because like I said, you never know what exactly the speed the other person is going to pick at one point of time. So it is a race. You'll have to win that race.
Okay. And Abhishek, your take?
Yeah, I believe both these exercises go hand in hand actually, right? You implement and then you test, right? So these will go I mean, these should go in a parallel tracks, right? We should follow an agile methodology here and implement, test, and then secure. So yeah, I mean, and security would be a factor, and it would be a factor which the organization should key in during the design phase itself. So I believe implementation we need to speed up because the other guys are speeding up, and we need to bring that speed on the table with the security in mind, and with security being the key design principles of that
Exactly.
implementation.
As long as the other doesn't take a back seat, I think, because, and I'll be digressing here just a little bit. When they teach us about journalism, right, they tell us one thing, that timeliness and accuracy is everything, right? But when it actually push comes to shove, accuracy needs to take the front seat, timeliness takes the back seat. It's okay if you're losing from another channel, that's fine, as long as you are giving out the correct information. So keeping that logic in mind as well, I think there needs to be some sort of prioritization also in place. But at the same time, I will agree with what both you and Abhishek, you and Sarthak has said, that at the same time, when you cannot be running a race when the other competitors have a jetpack on their back. So I do agree with that point. It's a great analogy there, Sarthak. So Abhishek and Sarthak, thank you so much. Very, very invigorating conversation. Thank you so much. I would have loved to go deeper into this, but again, time constraints. And everybody who has tuned in right now, ladies and gentlemen, the Arup incident costed $25 million. That's not a small number. It was not a technical breach. It was a trust breach. And as AI agents gain more permission inside enterprises, more access to email and documents and databases and infrastructure, the potential cost of the next trust breach gets larger than ever. So of course, India's adoption is moving fast. But the question is whether the resilience is moving at the same speed. Right now, we can only hope for the best. So everybody who has tuned in right now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I'm Antara. This is Point Break. I'll see you again next episode.